Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts and Overviews. I am your host, Tech Coach Ralph, where we are engineered to win. In today's episode, we are going to be wrapping up our comparison between Playwright, Cypress, and Selenium. So we've been going through this for the whole month of January, and we are pretty much at our last step in this comparison. We have learned so much about these three tools, including working on them in our live stream so we can have a live implementation, because you guys know I couldn't care less as much about the theory as much as a practical implementation. The theory is super important, right? Trust me, to understand how things work, but unless you get your hands on it, it doesn't mean much to you, right? So you have to get your hand on it, and that's why we do the live stream. So definitely join us on the live streams, or go back and watch the previous live streams where we were actually implementing Cypress, Playwright, Selenium through TypeScript on the FreeMind Recovery by my friend Jared from the Calculus Coder. FreeMind Recovery is a startup application that he built, and it is, it's popping. It's very helpful to help with mental health and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. Okay, so we are going to be starting off with talking about how these browsers, or how these tools, these automation tools, handle iFrames in the browser while it's automating, and then we're going to continue into some API stuff, and then we're going to wrap it up. All right. So let's just jump right into it. Let's not waste any time. Time is money. So let's go. Okay. All right. So picking up where we left off, right? So when we last met, we were talking about, so picking up where we left off. When we last met, we were talking about screenshots and videos. Now we're going to move on into iframes. So first of all, what the heck is an iframe? So an iframe is an HTML element that embeds another document within the current HTML document. So pretty much you can have a website or a web page, and then inside of that web page you have an iframe which loads another web page, right? It can be a page that's on your site, or it can be a totally external site, right? It's just it's a frame where it loads other content. Okay, using iframes, you can add content from another website to a web page. It allows you to engage users by supplementing your content, including sharing and embedding YouTube videos and external photos, right? So a lot of times when you go to YouTube and you want to embed, like let's say you wanted to embed this video, right? Like let's say you click on the share button and you go to embed. It gives you a code where you can take that code and put it into another website or something like that, and then it'll show that video. Okay, so below is a syntax for an iframe. So iframe ID parent underscore iframe, name demo parent iframe, width 700, height 450, and then where the iframe is coming from. And pretty much that's how you would be configuring it, right? Below screenshot is the example of nested iframe where the parent and the child both iframe. The screenshot below shows the click here button in the parent and child iframe. So you have the click here button here, and you have the click here button here. One of them is loading from the parent frame, and the other is loading from the child frame. Okay. So let's keep going. So Playwright. When testing iframes in Playwright, we can use the method frame locator, which allows us to retrieve the iframe and locate elements inside that iframe. Frame locator captures the logic sufficient to retrieve the iframe and locate elements in that iframe. Let's take a simple example. Now let's launch HTTP, the internet, Heroku app.i/iframe. We have to enter the data in the text area, which is under the iframe. So it's an iframe containing the tiny MCE WYSIWYG editor, right? Inspect the area of this frame. Notice below that it is represented by the tag iframe having the ID mentioned. Okay, so there it goes, right? Inspecting iframe, right? All right, so there it goes, right? iframe, ID, etc. Okay, we have a method called frame locator in Playwright. As seen below, using this method, we can identify the above frame that we inspected. So let's say, page frame locator, and then you pass in the ID of that iframe and locator HTML. So once we have located the frame, we have to click it before we start applying into the code snippet attached. So you find the frame here, and then you say click on that frame, and then you can start doing whatever it is that you want to do in that frame. All right, so that's pretty much how it works in Playwright. let's move on to Selenium. So Selenium is capable of working with iFrames in a simple way. And I remember because I started working on Selenium maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, and having to be able to figure out the frames and stuff like that. So Selenium has been around for a very, very long time. It's the strongest one out there, right? Pretty much the way that these other automation tools are built, they try to make the limitations of Selenium better, but the Selenium has just been there. They've been doing it for such a long time, All right. So in the case of Selenium, we have to move to the iframe window and do all activities that you want to do. Once all actions are done, then move back to the main page of the application to do further actions. By default, Selenium has access to the parent browser driver. The driver focus must change from the main browser window to the frame to access a element. There are various ways to switch to frames. So there's switch to frame ID, switch to frame, and then switch to frame ID, right? So it's just like the one in Playwright where you just pass in the frame ID, or the name is passed out as input to the switch to method. The syntax would be pretty much driver switch to frame, and then you pass in the ID as a parameter, which is switching to the frame with ID. All right. So then you have switch to frame I, which would be the index. So let's say you have 5 different iframes. You'd say switch to the 5th one, et cetera, right? Or the 4th one, because it starts at 0. The index starts at 0. The index of the frame is passed as an argument. The index starts from 0, like I just said. So driver switch to frame 0, switching to the first frame on the page. Then we have switch to frame web element n. The web element of the frame is passed as an argument. So driver switch to frame I, switching to the iframe with web element I. All right. And then we have switch to default content, switching the focus from the frame to the main frame. So that's pretty much like switching back to the whole entire page instead of a particular frame into it. Okay. And you can definitely try this, launch this URL and copy the text, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep going. But this shows you the syntax of how it would look in Selenium, right? So you see, look at here, driver switch to frame and then frame bottom. And that should be the ID of the frame, right? Let's see. Can't really see here. Name frame. Yep, there goes name frame bottom. Okay. So it's a little hard to see, but that's what it says here. Okay, now let's look at Cypress, right? Cypress does not handle iframes directly. We need to install the plugin and use the plugin to perform actions on elements inside the iframe. We can install the plugin and then use the custom command. So that's already an annoyance that I can see, right? That you need to install an additional plugin for Cypress. Maybe it's not, right? Because maybe if having it installed by default when it's not really necessary, it makes it heavier. So maybe it's not an annoyance. I don't know, right? I don't know. So notice below it is represented by the tag iframe having class mentioned below. Okay, so iframe and then class demo frame. Okay. The below code works with elements inside an iframe. So describe, and you've seen this type of code on our live stream. So describe this might be a typo right here, but iframe example, iframe test cases. So visit this URL, and then the frame is loaded for demo frame, iframe find draggable, and then assertion of whatever text it is in there. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much the part for the iframe. Let me know what you think about that. From what I can see, you have more options in Selenium for the iframes, but you can get it to work in Cypress with the plugin, and Playwright seems to work as well. But there just seems to be a lot more options. But at the same time, iframes might not be used as much anymore, and it was so much more prevalent when Selenium came out, so that's why they had so many different options of how to switch to it. But maybe it's not something that is as relevant in today's day and age with all the technologies that are coming out. Whether it's like with React or whatever Bootstrap. So yeah, that's whatever you're using in your code. It might not iframes might not be as prevalent anymore. Okay, so now let's get into APIs, handling API requests. Right, Testing doesn't mean to do verification of elements in UI only, but we also have to verify data that is bound with these elements from the API side as well. API stands for Application Programming Interface, is the middle layer between the presentation layer and the database layer, right? If you're not familiar with APIs, we'll probably go over it at some point, but you should it's right now. This is like if you don't know how to test APIs, your ability to land a job as a QA engineer is going to be severely diminished, right? So I highly recommend you learn what APIs are, how to use them, how to test them, okay? APIs play a very important role in communication between one software application to another. Because of this reason, testing of APIs have become very important nowadays. Here we are comparing Playwright versus Selenium versus Cypress to see how we can do API testing using these frameworks, right? So, Playwright can be used to access the REST API of your application. Below are examples of how we can automate API requests using methods get, post, put, delete. And like I said, if you're not familiar with these, you should really jump on it to figure out what's going on here, right? So get method. Let's see how Playwright handles this, right? So you have the base URL, and you say, so you're doing the get, and you say async request, await request, get, and then the URL, and then you expect the response status of 200. So it's just a regular API request. So that's pretty cool that you can handle that directly in Playwright. I would say a +1 to Playwright in that. Post method. So we do the same thing, await request, and then you send a post to the endpoint and the data, and then you would get a response. So the response body with an ID to be 123 and a response status of 201, which should be, I think 201 is accepted. All right, so I find it really cool that they have this built into Playwright, right? And then the put is going to be the same way, but put, and then what your expectations are to be, what you're sending, what you want to get back, and then the delete is just the exact same thing. So that's pretty cool. I must say that is really cool of Playwright. And like I said, it's all depends on the needs that you have for your project of which one you're going to use. It's hard to say one is better than the other because if you want something that's been around for a long time, maybe Selenium is the one that you go with. If you want something new, but let's say you want something that can do APIs built in, maybe then you would want to go with Playwright. So let's see what they say about Selenium, right? Selenium is primarily a browser automation tool and not designed for API testing. It allows you to interact with web browsers and automate user interactions on a website or web application. But Selenium can't be used to directly test the functionality of an API, as it doesn't provide any functionality to send HTTP requests and assert on the API response. However, Lambda test can be used to perform API automation using Selenium. Lambda test is a cloud-based platform that provides a Selenium grid that allows you to perform Selenium automation testing on various browser operating systems and devices. One way to use Selenium to test an API using Lambda test is by launching a browser on Lambda test Selenium grid, navigating to the API endpoint, and then using Selenium to interact with the API by sending HTTP requests and asserting on the response. This is similar to how you would test a website or an application. So I would not do this because I'm not familiar with Lambda test. It may be something that we could explore one day, but I think this would significantly reduce the speed of your tests because API tests, they run really quick, right? Because that is their purpose. Like there's no UI that needs to be involved in running API tests. So I would not I would not go about testing APIs by going to a browser endpoint, or going into a browser. The thing with Selenium, right? Because that it is primarily it's really open source, right? And you can build a whole framework that can an automation framework, which I've done in the past, right? But you can build an automation framework where it will have browser-based testing, UI testing, and you can use Selenium for that. And then you can also implement API testing through a different package, right? So in Java, I use Rest Assured. In Python, we use the request library that is pretty much built into Python. And I'm sure that C# has its own. Java has, I believe Java uses Fetch, right? So you can definitely you can definitely integrate with that if you want to use Selenium, and then you can still do the post, get, put, patch, delete, whatever it is, and then use your whatever validation library to assert the responses that you get. So it's not that big of a deal, right? All right, so let's jump into Cypress real quick. Using Cypress, we can do API automation. To make a Cypress API call, Cypress has provided the command sci.request.get, post, put, delete, and delete are some of the methods that are part of the API testing, which can be performed by Cypress. Below are the examples of different methods. So we have to perform a get operation, we shall make an HTTP request with the sci.request and pass two parameters in sci.request, method name and URL. So if we look at over here, sci.request get, right? We're saying we want to get, and then we have the URL that we want to send the request to, and then we should expect a response status to equal 200. And the same thing for the post, we shall make a HTTP request with the sci.request and pass three parameters, right? So if it's a post, it's going to be three parameters: the method name, the URL, and the body. So if you look at over here, it would say post, and then we would have the endpoint that we're sending it to, and then this is the body of what we're sending, right here. And then we send that, and we should get a response equal to 201. And very similar for the put method. The put method is very similar to the post method. It's just doing a different. It's more of an update than a creation. Post is for create. Put is to update. All right. And I mean that's the standard that it should follow. Developers might change it up a little bit, but that's what it should follow. Okay. And then the delete, would probably be two parameters, like setting delete, and then what to the endpoint of what should be deleted, and then the expected response, right? Usually deletes are 204s, right? So here's the thing. Selenium doesn't offer API testing, right? But you can use whatever default library to make API requests in order to validate, right? So it's not that big of a deal. The Playwright has it built in, right? And so does Cypress. But one preference that I would have in how Playwright does it over Cypress is that the method is built into it. So that to me, that reduces the chances of error and typos and stuff like that by having the method that you're sending as part of the request, right? As opposed to in Cypress where you have to pass that as a parameter. I just see that there's likely chances of typos and stuff like that. And I would prefer not to do it this way. And like if it was like sci.request.post, and then you just pass in the endpoint as well as the body, as opposed to having to pass it in like this. To me, there's a lot of chances for error that way. So I mean, small thing, but that's just how I see it. All right. From doing this for such a long time, just trying to make it as easy as possible to prevent like having some weird issues, So now let's jump into the community support for these tools, which community support makes a big difference as well, right? So Selenium is an open source suite of tools for automating web testing, and it has a large and active community of users and developers. There are several ways that community members can get support and help with Selenium. Here we are comparing Playwright versus Selenium versus Cypress to see their community support, all right? So Playwright is a new player in the market and has a smaller but growing set of community resources. There are numerous resources available to help users get started with Playwright and troubleshoot any issues they may encounter. The Playwright team has great documentation and an active presence on GitHub where users can submit bug reports and feature requests and contribute to the development of the tool. The team is also responsive to questions and feedback from the community. In addition to official channels, there are a number of community-run forums and resources where users can get help with Playwright. These include Stack Overflow, of course, Reddit, and the Playwright Gitter chat. All right, so like I said, Playwright is super new, but it is growing. It is getting more and more popular, right? So now Selenium. There are several ways that community members can get support with and help with Selenium. Selenium documentation, as we've seen on live streams, it is a comprehensive resource that covers all aspects of using Selenium. It includes tutorials, a reference guide, and information on installing and configuring Selenium. Selenium forums. The Selenium forums are a good place to ask questions and get help with Selenium. There are separate forums for different programming languages as well as general discussion forum. There's a Selenium Slack channel. I should join that Slack channel, right? The Selenium Slack channel is an active community of Selenium users and developers who are available to answer questions and provide support. To join the Selenium Slack channel, you will need to request an invite by filling out a form on the Selenium website. I'm going to go look at that. And then we have Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a popular question and answer website. We all know Stack Overflow, or if you don't, you should, right? If you're in the tech community, you should know Stack Overflow. But it is a popular question and answer website for programmers, and it has a large number of questions and answers related to Selenium. You can search for answers to your questions or ask a new question and get help from the community. All right. And lastly, we have Cypress. Cypress has a growing community, and their documentation is excellent. In addition, there are numerous unofficial forums and communities where Cypress users can connect and share their experiences with the tool. In addition to online forums, the Cypress community also provides support through various resources and documentation. The Cypress website features detailed documentation on installing and using the tool, a comprehensive API reference, and a library of example projects. There are also many blog posts, tutorials, and video resources available online that guide on using Cypress for various testing tasks. All right. So let's wrap it up with this comparison table: Playwright versus Selenium versus Cypress. Right. Playwright and Selenium, despite the fact that both tools simplify web page navigation and data extraction from dynamic websites, Playwright excels at handling complicated websites and large-scale projects. Selenium, on the other hand, boosts a lively community and significant language support. So, based on the language that you're writing in, it might be better to go off with Selenium versus the other tools. But to be honest, it's hard for me to agree that Playwright excels at handling complicated websites and large-scale projects because it's so new, and Selenium has been handling complicated websites and large-scale projects for over a decade now, right? So it's hard to say. Don't get me wrong, Playwright has these new features that are really, really cool, and it simplifies a lot of things, but I don't know if we can trust it on that scale yet, all right, so meanwhile, Cypress, on the other hand, focuses on end-to-end testing within the browser and provides a user-friendly testing experience environment, right? Which, yeah, I agree that it is friendly, but just like if you see on the live stream, the way that when you start up Cypress, it opens up like its own little application and its own browser, and then everything is happening through there. I don't know. I'm not sure how I really feel about that. It is what it is. All right. So here is a detailed comparison of Cypress, Playwright, and Selenium. So language support. Selenium has so JavaScript, Java, C#, Python, Ruby, and it's pretty much the same ones for Selenium. And Cypress only has JavaScript and TypeScript, right? Which that can be a turnoff for like, because you might need to do it in one of these other languages, So if you don't support it, right? So browser support: Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, and then this one is Chrome, Edge, Firefox. So they all support the same browsers. Although I know Selenium could support Internet Explorer as well, and at the time they used to support Opera. I don't know if that's still the case, right? Okay, so it says. Oh, also, I think Selenium also supports Brave. So that's interesting. So framework support: Jest, Jasmine, Ava, Mocha, and Via Test. And Selenium has Mocha, Jest, Jasmine, TestNG, JUnit, Cucumber, and NUnit. And we're also going to add, right? Because this is in C#, right? This can be in different languages, but let's say this is Java, JavaScript / TypeScript, JavaScript / TypeScript. But how about in Python, right? So in Python, it can support PyTest, unit test, behave, right? So many different things. And then in Cypress, it just supports Mocha, Jasmine, and Cucumber, right? So continuous integration can easily be integrated with continuous integration tools like Jenkins, TeamCity, Circle CI. Same thing for Selenium. Same thing for Cypress, all right? Ease of use. Playwright has a user-friendly interface and requires minimal setup. Selenium, I will give them the L on this one, right? Because it is it's a much steeper learning curve, and there's a lot more setup steps for Selenium. But we still do it pretty quickly, and like the whole driver management from Selenium, that drives me it's pretty annoying, right? But they're making strides to get that to be a little bit more robust. And then Cypress has a user-friendly interface and requires minimal setup as well. So test writing experience. So for Playwright, it is intuitive. It is moderate for Selenium, and is intuitive for Cypress as well. DOM manipulation, easy in Playwright, and in Cypress, it is moderate in Selenium, right? And then community support, growing community for Playwright. So that's one of the downfalls of Playwright, is that it's just not that popular yet to have the same size of community as a Selenium does, right? So Selenium, large community with good documentation and support resources. And then Cypress is an active community with good documentation and support resources, but like we read before, it is limited in the languages that you can use it for. They all support headless mode. They all support parallel execution. However, Cypress only supports parallel execution using a CI and CD. You can I'll tell you this, right? In Selenium, there is a bit of a setup to get the parallel execution done correctly. I'm not 100% sure about how that's set up in Playwright, but they all do support it, right? Built-in network control, yes, for Cypress, and for Playwright, no for Selenium. But there are things you can do to do that. There are some packages you can do, right? And we've seen it on our live streams from a while ago. Getting to work, which is it's a bit tricky, but getting to work, what they call that? I forgot the name of it, but the library to Selenium Wire, right? That one would enable some type of network control. iFrame support, they all support iFrames, although remember you need a plugin for Cypress, right? And then for the drivers, no drivers. So that's what I was saying, right? There's no drivers required for Playwright and Cypress, but you do need a driver for each browser, which also brings some functionality to it, right? So multi-tap support, it says yes for Playwright and for Cypress, and no for Selenium. However, there are ways to I've been doing this for a long time where you can switch through tabs and stuff like that on Selenium. So I don't know if this is actually accurate, right? So unless I'm misunderstanding what they mean by multi-tab. And then they say drag and drop support. They all support that. So test assertion libraries. So Mocha and Chai, PyUnit, JUnit, TestNG, almost any language specific test framework can be accepted, and then Mocha and Chai. So yeah, so I don't know. I think because of this one is weird because the languages that is supported by the framework you should be able to use the same assertion library. So I'm not 100% sure why they would only say Mocha and Chai for Playwright. And then inbuilt reports, yes, for Playwright and for Cypress, and no for Selenium. But being that Selenium is primarily based on the automation, there are a plethora of reporting framework that you can include to report, right? Cross-domain support, they all say yes. Debug features. Selenium does not have debugging tools. Yes, they don't. Playwright has debugging tools and a time traveling feature for easy debugging. Cypress has the same exact features. Automatic waiting, yes for the two Playwright and Cypress, no for Selenium. And then a dashboard, no for Playwright, no for Selenium, yes, provided as a premium and paid feature for Cypress. All right. Community support, good, very good. Good for Playwright, good for Cypress, very good as the user base is more, which we were mentioning before. For Selenium, built-in screenshots and video features, yes and yes for Playwright and Cypress. No built-in features, but you can customize it to include it for Selenium, all right? And then the pricing for this, right? Free for open source projects, paid for commercial use with Playwright, as well as for Cypress, free for open source projects, paid for commercial use. So if you're working for a company, right, then that company is going to have to pay for testing with Playwright and Cypress. And even if you're not, like, let's say you have your own business, right? And you're a commercial business. You're not an open source project. If you're testing your your website, your application, whatever it is, with Playwright or Selenium, then that is commercial use, and you'd have to pay for that. However, with Selenium, which I think that might be a big major factor, is that it is free for all use cases, right? It's open source, like you get what you get, and then you can customize it and do so much with it, right? So that is the comparison table. You know, it's a lot of information. I would say go back through it slowly to find out some more details. And now let's wrap it up. Okay, so in this blog on Playwright versus Selenium versus Cypress, we have learned how tools like Playwright, Selenium, and Cypress are designed to automate web browsers for testing. While they have distinct architectures, user bases, and objectives, it is up to the testing team to decide which tool is the most appropriate for their project and skill set, as well as you have to consider pricing as well, because if you're working on a commercial project, you definitely have to consider pricing, right? With the varying features and capabilities when comparing Playwright versus Selenium versus Cypress, it is essential to consider the needs of the project and the team's strength before making a decision. All right. All right. So that is the final portion of this breakdown. Let me know what you think. Do you use Selenium? Do you use Cypress? Do you use Playwright? Leave me a comment in the chat. Let me know. I am so curious. Like I've been doing the past few weeks, right? I've had exposure for all three of them in TypeScript. So it's been a bit of a learning curve for TypeScript because not entirely familiar with Playwright, not entirely familiar with Cypress, right? But and I'm familiar with Selenium, but learning to do it in a different language and using it's a learning experience, right? But it is amazing. So let me know what you think. Go ahead and check out those live streams as well, okay? As we're wrapping up, if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you can know every single time we go live. Like the video, share the video with a friend, a family member, maybe an enemy, everybody. Just share with everybody, right? So that they can get this amazing information. And then if they are your enemy, they can become your friend because you help them level up, all right? As well as check out the Patreon at www.techcoachralph.dev, where you can get the information you need on how to level up in your technical skills as well as your career building, all right? And you can even sign up for one-on-one coaching with me. Spots are limited, but it's still open right now, all right? And on that note, we are going to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of The Bug Bite with yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. Remember, we are engineered to win, and we are out.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.